Well, today we have another show about public school education. That's right. What's happening in that public school around the corner from you? And we're focusing in today on the Harford County School District. And what better way to do that but to talk to the superintendent of schools at Harford County, Dr. Swan Bulson. I'm Ken Kidrowski, and you are on point. And thank you for joining us here on Point. I am Ken Kidrowski, and today we are very fortunate to have with us Dr. Swan Bulson, the superintendent of schools of the Harford County School District. And Sean, it is such a pleasure to have you on the show today. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Ken. Happy to be back.
Well, the first thing I want to do, which has nothing to do with the topic, is I want to thank you. And the reason why I want to thank you is because I'm a grandfather, and I'm a grandfather of a recent graduate of the Science and Math Academy at Aberdeen High School. And I had the best time at Ripken Stadium not too long ago watching that graduation ceremony. And I know that Aberdeen High School wasn't the only high school that graduated from there, but I just want to say to you, your administrative team, and the team from Ripken Stadium, if they're listening, watching, that you guys all together did a magnificent job. I mean, it was done so well. And as a grandparent, and I speaking of all the grandparents and parents and graduates, I mean, thank you so much. It was after marching through all those difficulties and students wondering and parents wondering if there was going to be a graduation ceremony at the end of the road, it was sensational. So thank you again.
Well, thank you. We had great teamwork with the team at Ripken, and they were just amazing. And of course, even better was the fact that we were able to have all 10 graduations there, which we'd scheduled, go on time without weather interruptions. And I don't know that could ever happen again, but it certainly made for, a fun ending to the year. It was nice to be able to do that.
Well, it was well thought out, well planned, well executed, and all that. So I'll stop throwing the roses at you and your team. It was just so well done, and it was a great evening because my grandson graduated with all that hardware around his neck, and it was extra special because of just the surroundings were so nice, and of course the weather was near perfect. So thank you for all of that. Sean, it's been well over a year since we talked the last time, and the last time we talked, and I was there in person with you in your office, nobody knew about this virus thing. Nobody knew about it. Nobody talked about it, and it was something that nobody probably even imagined. And as I said to other superintendents who I've interviewed during the past few months, when you're in college, when you're in grad school and everything, there are all sorts of courses about what to do in this case in education or that case, what to do about a fire drill, what to do about somebody with weapons in the building. There are all sorts of preparatory courses or exercises to do, but nobody ever developed Education 605 teaching in a pandemic. And so one superintendent said to me, it was like building the airplane while you're flying in the air. Is that something you can relate to?
We used that metaphor many times. Change comes slowly in big entities like public school systems of our size. And I joke at times that there are a few things, one of my standard stories is that in elementary schools, you could have every faculty meeting tweaking how you drop off kids and pick them up. The staff likes to talk about it. It's important to parents. That's a really key safety place in the school. Well, we had to reinvent every one of those types of details in a really short period of time. So that's something that we could normally spend a lot of time on, just one tiny little detail of what we do. But we had to change everything, and we had to, take a lot of feedback in. We had so much to figure out in a short period of time that it was a challenge. We've come through the other side, and there are certainly things I wish we'd done a little differently at the time, but we came through. I think we came through well.
And from what I know, because, well, being a grandparent and being tied into the Harford County School District by hearing the stories, I feel that that's exactly the case. Now, you guys, I don't know if you want to say you've mastered the art of long distance learning and virtual learning. I don't know if you want to say go out that far, but maybe you've done it well enough so that the majority of the students benefited from instruction this year. But even if you did master it, would you agree with other people in education that the human element was lost along the way, the human touch, the human care, and all that was something that was lacking, despite how well the computerized instruction was?
I think there's a lot of truth in everything you just said. We learned a ton about how to deliver instruction virtually. I think it reinforced something we all understood, is that the person-on-person interaction is so essential. There's so much that occurs in the verbals and nonverbals and the expressions and all those things that occur that make the learning more rich, make it more possible for teachers to be able to respond to students. We had a very small number of students who excelled during virtual. We had a lot of students do very well. We had some students really struggle. So we're trying to tease out what were the things that we learned that benefit us. Now, some of the work that I've heard principals talk about is their teachers had to be even more deliberate about how they created and established relationships with students. And some of them carved out even more time at the beginning just to really get to know, maybe a little bit more small talk time. We really push on teachers to be teaching and on target every minute of every lesson. And we found that wasn't possible. They needed some time to connect with kids. And so now we're going back and looking at how can we benefit? I think we learned some really important lessons during that. So the personal was definitely something that we had to analyze throughout. I think we improved greatly. One of my goals at the beginning of the pandemic, we kept saying it over and over again, we're going to get better every week. And I believe we did. And but now I think all the lessons we've learned, we knew it was important to have the personal relationships, but I think our teachers developed some really good skills and tricks and tips of their own that I think will benefit us into the future.
I'd like to suggest, and you don't have to be a magician or a brainiac to figure this one out, but I think what's going to happen is that because of the pandemic, almost every school district is going to benefit from these teachers marching through the pandemic, and now that they're marching out of the pandemic, their skill in front of a real live group of students will be so much more improved, because they will be aware of so many things that they weren't aware of before. So I think I'd like to suggest to you and the people who are watching that the level of instruction is going to go way up because of what the teachers have learned because of the pandemic. So there has to be some benefits that we reap from the pandemic. We have to benefit from it some way, and I hope that's one of them.
We have some insights into things that have improved and been strengthened during this. We know the ability to incorporate technology has grown, decades worth of progress in a short period of time. But I think you're right. We haven't completely realized, the benefits of what we've learned, and we're continuing to deliberately look back and try to gain access to those so that we can be sure we don't lose that after all that hard work to gain it. So that is part of our ongoing practice. What have we learned and how do we keep it? But we have a lot of work to do to make next year as normal as possible, but while also making it better and capitalizing on those things you described.
I don't want to have you relive a nightmare, but if you could go back to March of, what was it? March of 20...
13th, Friday the 13th.
Friday the 13th. If you can go back to then, who dropped the first bomb on you? Who dropped the first bomb on Sean that said, what are you doing? What are you thinking? Where are we going? How are we going to get through this, Mr. Superintendent? We hired you. Now you're here. Figure this out. Tell us what we're doing.
Well, I don't think it ever came through in just one line. We had a little buildup for the week, and we were all wondering and of course massively underestimating what we were about to confront, knowing it was something entirely different, but at the same time we had no capacity to understand that we were going to be looking at 14 months of this. And so one individual, no, I think, it became most real when the governor and the state superintendent during, the press conference where, Dr. Salmon announced that schools would be closed at least for the next 2 weeks. We hadn't had that happen before, except in large snow incidents. And so that created a great deal of both anxiety, but also, a flurry of activity to try to figure out how we were going to support students. And so if I had to point to any one thing, it was that press conference where we all got the word that this is what's happening. And again, we had no idea how long this would be and how deep this would go.
Well, do you think you're ready to write the book now? Can you get a hold of Simon and Schuster or something and can write the book like, "This is how you teach through a pandemic" by Sean Bulson? You're ready to write that? You ready to write that novel, that book?
I have no time for that. I'd rather get back to my day job. I like working with the schools and the leaders and the teachers. I'm not going to sit and write like that. There are plenty of people willing to do that.
Yeah. Okay. Spoken as a true loving superintendent of schools who loves the kids and loves the community and all that. Let me ask you this question. Did you ever think of the pandemic in this way? That it was like going through stages of grief. When somebody encounters grief, like there's a death in a family, it hits them in the face, and then they have to go through all those different stages of grief. Well, there were people in the community who got hit in the face with this. You can't come to school. And kids are saying, and even some kids who would love to cut classes, they're saying, "What do you mean I can't come to school? What do you mean I can't go to school?" And parents are saying, "What do you mean they can't go to school? And what about sports? And what about graduation? And what about the prom? And what about this? And what do you mean, Dr. Bulson? What do you mean?" So the question is, was it like going through stages of grief?
Without a doubt, except that one of the key elements of this is how over time our communities, because it happened in nearly every community, but how our communities became divided, with schools and health officials and elected leaders sitting right in the middle, knowing that there were such strong feelings on the two sides of the question. Those who wanted to lean toward more caution, and those more caution with regard to the virus, and those who were more concerned about the mental health and the impact of being closed and really wanting to open. And the fact that those camps just kept getting farther and farther apart. But both were going through those stages as you describe. There might be times when we make a little progress, and we'd hit a stage where we'd be in a place where we could make a change, and one of the groups would be a little more comfortable with their decision, and one would be less comfortable. We were constantly weighing that throughout. And that was a really important and challenging part of the dynamic, because there was no answer that felt like this is the one that's going to make the most people happy or comfortable. Everyone struggled with this pandemic in their own way, and they both felt equally strongly about it, or many people did. And there just wasn't, a best answer that I could see. It was a really big challenge. And again, it wasn't just school system superintendents. It was sheriff's offices and health departments and, those same types of places struggling with the same things.
Right. What I was going to ask you next, let's see, there are just so many things to ask you about. Next year, the upcoming school year, I asked one superintendent, you'll be back to normal. And he said, "Oh, no, Ken, no. It's going to be a new normal." Is that the way it's going to be in Harford County? Is it going to be a new normal? Is it going to be a a new creature, if you will?
I think we will forever look back at pre and post pandemic, and this will be a line where we recognize a significant change in how schools operate. We want to be able to capture some of what made people feel normal in schools. But as you've pointed out, we learned a lot during this, and we want to make sure that we're able to incorporate that and have those strengthened experiences from those things people learned. And so I do hope it's a new normal. I hope we've learned more about the importance of those relationships. I hope we've learned how to really attend to mental health, because that was a big part of what we discussed. I also hope we've learned better how to personalize instruction for individuals. And technology helps with that, but it's not the only answer. You know, the in-person part is where a lot of our personalizing occurs to adjust instruction to individual students. So I think we can grow in at least those three areas. That would be important leap forward to defining that new normal. But I think there's so much more to come as we keep unpacking what we've learned and what we've been through.
Yeah, yes, you're right. I can see that, and I understand that that just because the virus is fading away, at least hope to God it's still fading away. As long as people keep on getting the injections, it'll continue to fade away. But even with all that happening, there will still be lessons learned, as we're talking about, good things that we've learned, adaptations that have been made in your district, in many, many schools and schools all over the United States, so that hopefully the educational product will be new and improved and much, much better. Now, I've heard through different people in your district about the Swan Creek School, but I know little or nothing about this, Sean. So can you give me a clue about what we're talking about with the Swan Creek School?
Sure, of course. So actually, this was something that began before the pandemic, which is we'd begun working on how to develop a fully virtual program for students who needed that for a variety of reasons. And so that work had started. We've been researching how other school systems address the needs of students with unique circumstances. So we had a little bit of a head start, but again, we were thinking of just this one small setting. And so really what we did is we built on the work we had begun before the pandemic, but then of course, knowing that we were returning to school, knowing that things were moving in the right direction, that most of our students would be able to come back in a more normal approach to school, but that there would be some families for a variety of reasons who felt more comfortable remaining virtual. We wanted to have that offer. We wanted to be able to offer that option to people. And the big challenge for us was, okay, if we offer a fully virtual program for K to 12, what is our capacity? Because when we first put our information out to the community that we were going to offer this, and that if you were going to remain virtual, you would be in one school rather than spread throughout all the schools, which is what we had done through the year. Throughout the year, people were either in person, they were virtual, but the schools managed it at the school level. So now we're doing it in one school. We didn't know whether we were going to have 500 students or 10,000 students. And I think the course of the virus wasn't entirely clear at that point. And if we were still seeing really bad transmission rates and those sorts of things, that we'd be in a different spot. Anyway, our Swan Creek School is a fully virtual option, open to students in kindergarten through 12th grade. The families had a choice to express their interest back in, I think, early May. April and May, I think, was our timeline. And then we asked the families to kind of recommit and actually register in that school. So the students will be attending that will be their school. They won't be, on virtual assignment from, a different school in the county. Swan Creek will be their school of record, and they will attend that school full time. We've hired teachers to teach a fully remote program. It's the school is based at the Center for Educational Opportunity, which was our alternative school setting, or it still is our alternative school setting. And we have some other offerings there as well, because there's also a version where students do sort of part virtual work, and then they're coming into school a couple days a week to do what we're calling a blended option. But Swan Creek is specifically the students who are 100% virtual. Right now, I think we have a little over 500 students enrolled, spread across kindergarten through 12th grade. We think that's a very manageable number. We are treating it as we want students there who are going to thrive there. And so it's very important to us that if students who've registered for that school aren't doing a good job of attending, turning their cameras on, turning in their assignments, we're going to work on bringing them back to an in-person setting because we want students in the best place. But like I said, we do have a number of students who, for a variety of reasons, did really well in virtual, and we want to offer that. I think having a virtual option is something school systems will have to do from here on out. I think it will be an expectation, and I think in a way, we're leading the state in that. I'm excited to say we were one of the first to be approved for that, and I think we have a really good plan. But just like what happened this last year with the pandemic, I think we still have more learning to do, and I'm excited to see what our teachers are able to achieve this year there.
I think that comes under the heading of cutting edge, doesn't it, Sean? I mean, I'm just, I'm taken back. I'm amazed that a public school district such as Harford County is offering that. I mean, wow. I mean, how are the high school kids going to do virtual football games?
Well, I mean, you touched on a tough subject there. We are not offering sports for the virtual students, and that's something they understand when they register. We're going to try to do. Right. We're going to create some clubs and some things like that, and some will be virtual. We might try to do some in-person things to allow students to socialize a little bit. That is one of the details of our school, is those 500 students won't have access. I mean, they won't have access to the extracurriculars in the same way a student in a comprehensive school does. And that's a decision that, parents know that going in, so they're going to have to consider that.
Well, just as long as the parents read the manual, so to speak, and understand that this is the way it's going to run, and these are the expectations, and this is what's offered, and no, they won't have everything that they would have if they were going to Jarrettsville Elementary or Falston Middle or Aberdeen High School. That it won't be the same. It'll be wonderful. The students will get what they need, but it won't be exactly the same as they did in the real world. It'll be virtual, but they'll be successful. So an amazing story there, an amazing story. So before we go running off your show.
I think prior to this year, it would have been hard to get people to fully wrap their head around what a program like that would be. But every one of these students who registered for that school has had some experience with online learning this year. So they're a little more familiar than they might have otherwise been if this were our pilot year for a brand new thing.
So you see, there you go. There's another thing. It took this mess for people to learn a lesson, if you will. So they engaged in online learning, and now many people say, "Whoa, gee, I mean, for me, I love the online learning." And another thing we didn't talk about is what I learned from other superintendents is that there are a lot of things that superintendents can now do online that they didn't do before, such as, and maybe these aren't the best examples, but for instance, signing documents online and attending more meetings, Zoom meetings online where they don't have to leave the district offices. And maybe teachers will have more conferences in order to get more parents to participate in conferences. They can do them online instead of, if you will, forcing them to come into the building to have their traditional parent conferences. So are all those changes that are coming about because of the pandemic?
You're absolutely right. And so for us, it'll be striking a balance. We're all craving some of those in-person meetings also. I mean, I met more with superintendents over the last year and a half than I ever have because we had a call nearly every week, but I haven't seen any of them in a year either. And I mean, those relationships are important. So we want to strike that balance. I do think with regard to meetings, we now have more options, and the online version for a lot of meetings actually seems better for particularly the special education meetings, the IEP meetings. it seemed to be much less of a burden on parents. What my principals have reported is more frequently now we'd have both parents at a meeting, where before, one might, take the time off to attend a meeting and the other one have to work. So it is a way to have some people more engaged, and that's, we can work more efficiently. We can work in a way that benefits everyone involved, parents, students, employees. And so we just need to be thoughtful and deliberate about that, because we know some of those meetings, we really need to have them in person so we can sit down with people and, sort of have that more personal experience. But we have better tools now.
Okay, Sean, now we get to the hard questions of the interview. Now I really have to grill you. Let me see, I have to take some notes here. How's your health after going through the past over a year with the pandemic? How's your health holding out? Are you still sane? Are you still doing well? Okay,
still doing well.
Is the hair going more gray? Are you losing any hair? Are you doing all right in that department? How's it going?
That unfortunately is a steady decline since starting this job. Gray and then fewer hairs to count. So yes.
Okay, and the final set of questions, and we discussed this on our first meeting, and I told you on the second meeting we would do this, so I'm sure you're ready to go. Now you can name all the mascots of all the schools in the district. Are you ready? Are you ready to do it?
Sure, we'll put it in a video for you.
Okay, Jarrettsville Elementary is the kangaroo. All right, so I'll give you that one. So, okay. Jumper, I think it's Jumper the kangaroo. And now my little granddaughter, when I get home and she watches, she'll say, no, Pop, it's not Jasper, it's somebody else. But anyway, Dr. Sean Bulson, thank you so much for your insight, for your dedication to duty, for doing a great job with those graduation ceremonies, for putting together, along with your staff, the Swan Creek School. It's been such a delight to talk to you, and I hope we can do this again soon. So take care of yourself, stay healthy, and God bless you and the entire Harford County School District. Take care.
Thank you. You as well.
Wasn't he great? It's such a pleasure to listen and talk to a superintendent of schools such as Sean Bulson. I mean, so much information that we can unpack from that discussion with the superintendent of schools at Harford County. And it doesn't make any difference whether you live in Harford County or you live somewhere else. You could appreciate and learn what's happening in public school education and what might happen in the future in public school education. So I really appreciate the time that you've spent with me here today. I'm Ken Kiedrowski, and you've been on point.